The Grenfell Tower fire on the 14th of June 2017 that killed 71 people spread up the outside of a block of flats that had been wrapped in plastic that burns.
How is that possible?
It's jumped up all the way along the flats.
How and why it was put there is the focus of a police investigation and a public inquiry.
How was that?
But Sky News has identified the disaster is a symptom of a much wider problem. A national fire safety crisis, as increasing amounts of combustible plastic materials have been used on buildings of all sizes.
We've had a push to insulate buildings, and the easiest way and cheapest way to insulate them is using these combustible materials. And somewhere we lost our eye was off the ball.
As the plastics industry capitalised on the green agenda, the building regulations failed.
I'm afraid there will be buildings that are unsafe, and that must be a worry for the people who are falling asleep in them.
The danger from combustible plastics has grown as successive governments ignored repeated warnings to take action.
Do you know for certain that your submission containing warnings wasn't the only submission containing warnings?
Yes, I've seen other people's submissions.
And crucially, fire safety experts who tried to warn about the dangers were routinely silenced.
It's enough to shut you up.
I think perhaps more than anything else, other people were silenced by saying, "Oh, you better not say anything about that. Look what happened to him."
The cladding that burned on Grenfell Tower was made of combustible plastic-filled decorative panels covering a thick layer of combustible plastic foam insulation. Together, they're thought to have contained as much fuel as 30,000 litres of petrol.
We are at the early stages of a very big, exciting industry.
They were fitted to comply with rules brought in by a government desperate to meet its climate change commitments. In 2011, the Department for Energy and Climate Change turned to the insulation industry for help. They set up a committee to cut the amount of energy wasted by poorly insulated homes. Simon Hay, now a fire safety investigator, was on the committee with senior figures from many of the big insulation firms.
The point from the insulation companies is that they were going to sell a lot more insulation.
4 of the 10 firms represented on that committee were members of a powerful plastic insulation lobby group called BRUFMA.
I'm technical manager at Simpleducks. I'm also on part-time secondment to construction.
A leading member of the committee was Rob Warren, technical director at Celotex, the firm whose insulation would be fitted to the outside of Grenfell Tower 4 years later. His take on the committee was revealed on a now deleted web page under the heading Celotex Enter Government. He said he was working inside government to shape this critical policy, enabling the insulation industry to maximise the benefits. His attitude reflected the aims of BRUFMA, which since the Grenfell Tower fire has changed its name to the Insulation Manufacturers Association. It states it has high-level involvement in the drafting and regular revision of British and European standards and building regulations. But according to Simon Hay, one topic was not raised in the Whitehall meetings.
Was fire and safety mentioned in your hearing?
No. I can't be categorical because, of course, there were many meetings which took place and they were a number of years ago. But from my recollection, I'm not aware of the fact that fire was mentioned.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Many of these protesters feel their voice has been left unheard for years. Today, in the wake of appalling tragedy, they came to demand a response. They asked for more support for survivors, more details about how many people were living in the tower, and also more information about the building work that was done to Grenfell Tower.
Everyone wants answers here. We don't know how many people have still been unaccounted for. We need answers. We need to know when things are going to happen. We want to know when people are going to put housing. We need answers now.
The protesters turned their attention to the building, first hammering on the locked doors and then entering the town hall itself. Around 20 police officers came in to clear them, and by then the protest organisers themselves were also asking people to leave the building. If they'd wanted to make a point about anger and frustration, it had already emphatically been made.
The public inquiry that has been promised by the Prime Minister is going to be appointed by and led and appointed by somebody who the Prime Minister appoints. We believe that is not impartial. There must be an independent inquiry, an inquest into what led to this gross tragedy that the people of London had to suffer.
There were scuffles, clashes between protesters and security guards, and there is real and growing tension here, tonight, in perhaps the richest borough in Britain. But this isn't just about fury. It's about a community dealing with grief.